Hello and welcome inside the Parc Fermé for the podcast, which we call number 708, the Turkish Grand Prix review. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to review the Turkish Grand Prix in all of its glory. But before doing that, I have to introduce my guest who comes on to the podcast. Oh my gosh, what a weekend this guy had, huh? We're going to talk about that. Woo, I know what you're saying. Who is he?
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charsley, the International.
It's the International Paul Charsley, who's coming off of a Sebring 12-hour P2 finish in the Aston Martin Heart of Racing team, number 23. Paul, congratulations. That is, my friend, awesome.
Yes. Is my chest puffing out a little bit?
Yes. You got your AMR shirt on there, I see.
That's right. Yep. Yes,
that's great. Well, it's cold and flannel season here, and so being a knuckle dragger from the Midwest, in the winter, it's all flannel for me. But I like your kit much better, Paul. You guys, my gosh, what a season! This is a season ending. You got a P2 finish at the 12 Hours of Sebring, which everyone will tell you is no easy feat on that track. That track is a beast. And for you guys watching the arc of your season starting out, you had that disaster in Daytona, which was really difficult. You had the no-show in the second race, steady progress, a series of top 5 finishes, and then you end up P2 in class. What a terrific result, Paul. You guys must be excited.
Oh, we're so excited. I mean, it was just, as you say, the season was just a disaster at the beginning, and it was the first race of a team that, everyone knew each other, and it was just, just knocks you back, and then all the COVID thing comes in. You don't even know if you're going to do a season, then you get the season going. And there's been so many ups and downs, but we've gradually been knocking away, getting closer to the front. We had one podium already this year at Charlotte in the pouring, splashy rain, a mix-up race. And then just to come to Sebring, which is my second favorite track in the US. And it's...
Your first being?
Road America.
Yeah, right.
But it's a fantastic track. It's a brutal race.
Yeah.
Daytona's twice as long, but I think Sebring is twice as punishing. The bumps, the peril there is second to none, really. There's a reason.
It's just a 6-hour sprint race, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, literally every session, every stint is a sprint race. Because you just can't afford to loosen anything up. And we had ups and downs in the race. We were competitive, but we had an awful qualifying run where we qualified 11th or something. And as I said to everyone, to the guys before we started the race, I said, hey, we've got 12 hours. We just need to pass one person an hour. That's all we have to do, right? So, you put in that perspective, but you really, it's difficult, The GTD field is very, very tight, and there's some really good drivers in it.
Oh, man, yeah.
Great teams, Mike Shank and the Lexus factory team, et cetera. And just to be
the WeatherTech Ferrari team, tough team.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to mix it up with those things was our first goal, right? And now, we got to Sebring, we tested there a couple of times, and we thought we had a good car, and qualifying took the wind out of us a little bit. But as usual, our car works great in the race, and the engineers did a fantastic job in predicting how the track would evolve, so that we'd have a really sharp knife to fight with at the end, which we did. So,
well, if our listeners didn't watch the 12 Hours of Sebring, Paul, this was really an incredible effort by the 23 team. You had a fuel leak, dropped you down to what, 10th, Paul?
Yeah, we had our fuel rig went bad. And
so, the fuel rig, right?
Yeah, the fuel rig wasn't pumping out fuel for whatever reason. There was some massive bubble got in there. I don't know. We don't even know what happened, but basically we lost 40 seconds in the pits. And when you're dealing with what I've learned, certainly this year is literally if you can gain half a second in the pits, it's a very valuable thing. So to lose that much was brutal.
But then you guys come back with Darren and Roman. Wow, my gosh, what stints.
Yeah, basically, called on the radio, say, hey, Darren, we lost a lot of time in the pits. all we can say is you pass these cars once, you can pass them again and just friggin' go for it. And he did. And he did an amazing job in his stints. And then Roman, the young 19-year-old kid jumps in, given all the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Yeah.
As he told us, he said, "This is the most scared I've ever been getting into a race car in my life." But you wouldn't know it from how he drove. You know, I mean, he literally, he was like Kimmy, and funny. He said, "Don't speak to me on the phone, on the radio anymore. I don't need position. I'm just going to keep my eyes forward and just try and win this, mother," And God darn, it came pretty damn close.
So Roman was like,
"No more radio, the rest of the race."
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Because he was using everything he could and he did a great job. It says he's, we passed the champions to get into third, and then the restart, we got up to second. So amazing job, job by everyone, the team. I mean, pit stops and strategy was great, and not just in the race, but strategizing how that car should be set up so that it's at its best at the end of the race was very, very important.
Yeah, well, congratulations to Ian and you and the entire team, man. It's such a cool team and a great charity. If you're not familiar with Heart of Racing and what they do, and the team that Paul is the sporting manager of, if you're not familiar with them, Google Heart of Racing and the number 23 Aston Martin. The charity is fantastic for the hospital in Seattle, and what they do for children is amazing. So, and that's why they race. And it's just a fantastic operation. So I couldn't be more elated for you, Paul. That is awesome. And it's been such a blessing to have a friend that's in that racing business and to watch you and your excitement and the ups and downs. And there's times you and I talk and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe what's happening. And then, but the mountaintop experience of a P2, it's just been so good. And,
it's so good. And obviously in these COVID times, our team is shrunken because we have to go on with
right.
So this year not only am I a sporting manager, I'm also the lollipop guy too, which I've been in the pit stop situation where I've been jumping in and out of a car. That's easy compared to making sure you don't screw up with the tires or lifting the thing up too early. And I told you the story about the Ferrari team driving through my lollipop last time. So
that's awesome.
I had a mind to do that again, but I didn't do it to him this time.
Yeah, that's too bad.
It was cool to be fighting tooth and nail with Jeff Westphal, though.
That's awesome.
I looked at him right before he got in the car for his last stint, and I was like, "Here you go, here you go, boy." Yeah,
that's so great. Jeff's such a great guy too.
Yeah, he is.
Had him on the show, and he's the real thing, Paul. He's a fabulous driver too.
He is a fabulous driver. He did a great job too.
Yeah.
They probably deserved to win nearly. They got knocked off the track, unfortunately. But Jeff,
that's a shame. But Jeff is a great guy, and I had the honor of having him instruct me at Audi driving experience. Just a fantastic guy, and what a great series. I can't wait. And as we head into next year, I would love to do something separately around IMSA and your team and what you guys are doing, and maybe some different content for the website that we could follow you a little closer.
Yeah, if people wants to hear that, I think we could try and make that happen, because it's a little different than Formula One, but maybe we're a bit more inside than we can ever get to Formula One.
Well, that's just it. Yeah, I mean, we couldn't get any more inside a racing team than you are. You're the sporting manager for this team, and I just think it would be great to really capitalize on that and bring that content to all of our listeners that would be interested. So. Yeah. Anyway, we'll keep you posted on that, because I love it, and I think it's great. Well, Paul, let's talk about the Formula One race at Turkey. It's been, I guess, 9 years since we've been to the Istanbul Park. For me, Paul, there's a reason they say that this is one of Tilke's best, and I agree. I really like the flow of this circuit, even compared to Austin, because Austin's got that sort of infield section, and they attempted a sort of turn 8 concept, but you don't really arrive at that corner at the same speed you do at Istanbul, right? So that never really worked like turn 8 at Turkey. And there's just something about that flow and this track. But as you look at that track, Paul, is there anything that stands out that's a really tough part of that track?
Well, I mean, as you said, it is one of Tilke's best because it has character
and flow.
It definitely has flow, and I agree with you. It's got more flow than Coda, because the little stadium section of Coda is a little Mickey Mouse. That's like another downside of Coda, I think, at that point.
Right, me too.
And Turkey doesn't really have any of those downsides there. It does flow really well, but there are challenging corners in speeds. There's elevations, downhill braking area there in the turn one's very tough. Obviously, you got the left-hander, which because of the surface became a really challenging corner, right?
Yeah.
You know, once last time the Formula One cars down here, it was a flat turn for the most part in qualifying for sure, but every single turn was with the surface change that they had was super challenging. So yeah, it's fun for a driver to get these flowing curves. So I don't want to see things as difficult, but every corner is challenging to get the most out of it, and it really takes full commitment to get a really good lap time around here. You just can't drive with one hand, that's for sure.
Well, certainly a lot of talk about the resurfacing, a lot of criticism, and maybe I'm getting soft on F1 here, but look, the COVID impact, trying to hustle and find races in Europe was just that task alone, and what F1 was able to put together for a complete schedule and bringing them back. And look, Turkey did the right thing. They had to resurface this. It hadn't been resurfaced since it was built. And so imagine all the comments and guffawing if they'd used the original tarmac with all those bumps and all the imperfections, and who knows if that track would have held together. And so, they had to do that. And unfortunately, it was still seeping bitumen and oils and made that slippery. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, it was the same for all the drivers. And you throw a little rain in there, and man, these drivers, Paul, they could not get on the welly. That back end was around. I mean, instantly around. And those cars didn't like it at all. No. And Pirelli brought the hardest compounds on offer. And they even upped the tire pressures for race day.
Yeah, crazy, right? I'm sure, I think that the drivers are all really relishing before the weekend to go to this track, because it is a great track to drive, and those who remember to drive it knew how great it was. So I'm sure they want to do over. Yeah, I'm sure they want to come back to this track and do it all over again next year. Let's hope they can, because I mean, it's not on the ticket, obviously, so it probably won't, but hopefully there's something. We know things have changed by the minute this year, so maybe that'll happen next year. But a lot of effort went into resurfacing the track. I agree with you. It's definitely the right thing to do, because you'd be damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? And these are just the things that happen, but it was a challenge that everyone had to do. And 2020 has been a challenge, so why should we change it now? Right. Why should we make it easy for them? So it was a discipline that some of the drivers got their head around, and some didn't. And the teams, they had to work hard. They were all night long trying to figure out how to get their car to work at this track. So I think that's fun, much as a short weekend is fun, I think the challenge of this track was probably more fun to see how the everything progressed from day to day, and what the teams were trying to do to try and get something in there, and then the rain come down, just kind of threw it all out there. It's just nuts.
It did. Yeah, if there was ever an example of how much more entertaining Formula would be if they would limit downforce, this was it.
Right.
These cars couldn't handle the speeds of the corners that they wanted to go into those corners at. Well, that's what you would get if you limited the downforce, right? Yeah. You wouldn't be able to go through turn 8 full beans, right?
No, that's what we want. And I think even maybe Brundle said it. We've even seen at Spa, right, where some corners aren't corners anymore because they're staying flat anymore. Let's back that up a little bit, and let's make all those corners.
That's just it. We talked about some of these tracks, the corners that were daunting aren't anymore. I mean, these current Formula One just kind of ignore most of those old corners. Now, other corners on that track have become, like I'm thinking Spoon, Curve, Japan, have become pretty challenging. But yeah, I'm with Martin on that. Reduce the downforce, man, because this is too fun to watch.
Yeah.
So,
sure was.
Well, let's talk about how they finished. Mercedes will start at the top. Lewis Hamilton, P1, Valtteri Bottas, and P14. What? Ooh, yeah.
Yes.
Didn't go well for the Finn. Well, let's start with the Finn. Bottas had contact at the beginning, multiple spins. I'm thinking I'm counting them 6. And a few off-road excursions, and was completely out of his element on this wet track. He said the second collision did something to the car. It was never the same, and he had front wing damage as well. This was I mean, this wasn't Beardy McBotost. This was, I mean, this was really uncharacteristic of him. He really, and I don't know, but he being finished, everybody was thinking he and Kimi should be able to bring their rally skills to
Right,
this. And
right.
boy, neither of them could get on top of this.
No, really, really strange. I mean, we all know that, a car gets damaged.
Mm,
It can have serious effects, even though the damage isn't visually
yeah,
very,
sure.
very extreme. But he just didn't have a good race anyway,
No.
right? I mean, you drive the car you got. Um, and so maybe you'd end up going slower, but still doesn't excuse spinning that many times and making those errors. So I think once that first issue happened, I think mentally kind of started going down a rabbit hole that he couldn't
Yeah, yeah,
come out of again. It's pretty
yeah.
much the title was lost. We kind of knew that already, but when it's real, then maybe that affects your motivation. I don't know. I
He's
hate.
on the radio saying like, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Have we got to the end
Yeah,
of the race? Are we there yet?"
yeah. I hate to. Yeah. We know what it's so easy to write a driver off.
Mm,
It's all the driver. He made a mistake. I'm sure there was a lot of car to it too. But as I
yeah,
said, the mistakes in the car, even if it's going slow, are kind of things I lean towards there. So
yeah.
it just wasn't a great race for him
No,
by any means. Obviously,
no.
you want to soon forget that.
And I would say very uncharacteristic of Valtteri.
Yeah,
It's not what you would expect from him. He had an off day for sure. By contrast, his teammate had a glorious day. Lewis's day was the complete opposite. He had a good start and he jumped up in amongst them, but the Mercedes began showing signs of the serious lack of grip that they'd exhibited all weekend long as he dropped back down to sixth, where he started from. But here's where it got interesting. Lewis, the wily veteran that he is, did not panic. And this is where it became a champion's drive as he remained completely patient, waited for the track evolution to come, waited for that grip to come, and on those worn enters, he ends up taking that thing all the way to victory. Having been a full pit stop behind the leaders at one point, he remained on those worn enters to pass Perez and then drive to victory for his seventh, count 'em seven, world championship. And he did so in style. Now, out of all of the championships he's won, that'll make it three of them. He's won titles by winning the race. And he did it in style. Lewis benefited from an incredibly talented team, it must be said, though, because they were struggling all week long. But Andrew Shevlin said that they took advantage of the rules around the change of climatic conditions, and they took advantage of that and actually got that car to work in those changing conditions. And finally, they figured out how to get the tires to work for them. And that changed the race entirely and allowed Lewis to deploy his incredible tire management skills to finish on those inners, which basically looked like slicks, Paul, by the time they were done. Had it started to rain there the last couple of laps, it maybe have been a different story, but just a champion's drive, a seventh title. What can you say? You've run out of superlatives for him and that team. It must be said that car was hooked up and allowed him just to let that race come to him, and it did.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is a team effort. He
Yeah,
obviously, you know, you wonder what their strategy was at the beginning of the race. I don't think anyone could have called this strategy being
right.
before the race started. But when you think about it, the tires that they brought were so hard that if you shaved all the rubber off, which you used to do in my old showroom stock days, right? They used to have this street tire and just shave them down to nothing. And then so it was nearly a slick and it worked better for you. So maybe this is, that was part of the evaluation as the race wore on, that it's the softest compound they can get, even softer than, the soft.
Yeah.
And if they can take care of it enough and don't abuse it and don't destroy it and gradually wear it away, you can nearly get a proper slick tire working for you. And that's kind of what eventually happened in the end. But you've got to be very mindful lap after lap. And as you
Yeah.
said rightly, being patient. You don't get too eager to go past everybody and destroy that tire, and then you've got nothing to work with later on in the stint. So I think, yeah, an incredible drive by Lewis. from the very beginning, being patient, evaluating the race as it went along, and making those calls. And I had a giggle though, the last call about coming in right at the end and putting the inters on. It's like, no, I think that pit lane's going to be a little slippery, you know.
Yeah.
Harking back to his first year in F1 where he threw away a championship doing
in
exactly
07.
that.
Right,
yes.
right.
So
yeah, he said he learned his lesson on that one.
Yeah, so he didn't forget that one, right? So
Yeah.
it was very, very smart of him, and the team were working, I'm sure, the whole time in trying to evaluate and getting the car set up for these conditions, but also giving him the right information so he could stay on task throughout the race.
Yeah, for sure. A terrific drive, terrific championship, equals Michael Schumacher's 7 titles, and just a fantastic result, and just a fantastic drive all the way around.
Yeah,
so
it's great way to win a championship, that's for sure, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. If you had to, win it back in 6th, you won it. But winning it the way he did it in style, and kudos to him. It's just a fantastic result.
Yeah.
Let's go to Racing Point. Sergio Perez, P2, Lance Stroll in P9. Lance did a wonderful job of getting that car on pole, Paul, and was leading the race until the track started to evolve. And then the wily old veterans, the wiser minds, and the veteran racers began to have the measure of Lance, and they kind of shuffled him to the back. Now, not all of the issue is just being a rookie and being swallowed up by veterans. He did have graining on that set of inters when he boxed and put those inters on. He had graining on it, had to stop for a second set, lost a lot of track position to finish 9th. But regardless, you could take the mick, but he needed this result. He needed that pole position. He's coming off a series of bad races for him, and I thought that was confidence building for him to put it on pole. Ran a good race, just unfortunately struggled. Maybe, I don't know if he was overdriving the tires or if the car was set up to be really hard on the tires in that wet, and that worked in the wet. But now as it dried out, difficult to know how they managed that. But his teammate didn't suffer like he did. And I would say there's a lot of lessons for Lance to learn as Perez and Hamilton and Vettel and Leclerc and everybody went around him.
Right, yeah, it was tough because he did a great job. He got the car on pole, and the start of the race was tremendous. Got a great start, and he was gone, man. I mean, he was up the road for a very long time in the race, but that second set of inters just killed it, and it seemed like the earlier you could stop for your second set of inters, the better you were going to be, because if you got those inters on so late in the race when the track was drying, that was the most likely problem you're going to have with the graining, etc., on the track, because you got higher tread depth, and with more grip, it's going to get a lot more heat instantaneously in the top of that tire, and that's going to cause that graining so instantaneously. And then Lance isn't a rookie, but it's how you manage that situation.
Right.
Do you go out and do you recognize that this is something that could happen, and make sure you just ease into that tire and don't panic and try and because when we were talking about how Lewis managed the tire over its life cycle, sometimes you do some abusive things at the beginning of a tire's life cycle. There's no coming back from that. And all you're doing is working with a crappier tire after that. So I think it's all to do with the approach and experience of the driver to recognize that before you even head out of pit lane.
Yeah.
And manage that throughout the set. I think there was probably still a way of coming back, but I think to some degree, Lance just started struggling even more and get more and more frustrated, and that's why he actually went back quicker than maybe he could have, even with the graining in the tire, because I think it was probably very frustrating to be leader of the weight by 10, 15 seconds at some point, and then all of a sudden being gobbled up by the rest of the field. Probably very frustrating, and then it makes you try harder, which never works. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, brutal, unfortunate, but for his teammate, again, a different day for Sergio. Perez was one of those wily veterans who had closed up on the back of Lance and with far better tire management skills and took over the lead when Lance boxed. Perez was looking good, but couldn't hold off Hamilton, who at the time had his car and tires switched on, and just he couldn't hold him off. And but beyond that, Sergio even staved off that last lap assault by Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel to come home second. I thought it was a brilliant drive by Sergio. Leclerc got around him, and then on those dodgy tires, Perez managed to get back around Leclerc. It was a great repass.
Oh yeah,
it was great. Now the key here is really that Racing Point needed this. Unfortunately, Lance dropped down to P9, but Perez's podium, that puts them, 5 points now between themselves and McLaren for third in the Constructors' Championship. That's worth $10 to $11 million to a team, and both those teams need that money. So Perez's effort, pulls out the gap. There was only 1 point between Racing Point, McLaren, and Renault. Now there's 5 points between Racing Point and McLaren based on Perez's and Stroll's performance.
Yeah, it's definitely the most exciting fight we got for the rest of the year, right? It's exciting. So, and it's for third in the championship, not for fifth. It's great. Yeah. So something changing. We know Sergio's been great on the tire since the very beginning.
Yep.
He came into Formula One. He did amazing things when we had those the roulette wheel of tires, right?
Yeah.
He nearly won a Grand Prix just by managing that. Just Alonso held him off there at the end.
Remember in that Sauber at Monaco?
Yeah. So I mean, he does he's a really fantastic driver. He really is, and I think he's getting credit now. I think. Unfortunately, there's not many places for him to go, but so hopefully he does stay in Formula One and gets a really good ride, because I think he really deserves it. I don't think he deserved to get kicked out of McLaren when he did, and so that's kind of put him on a downward spiral, or just a kind of floating midfield driver. But I definitely think if he got the right tool in him, he could be a race winner very easily. Manage the tire. I don't think he had the car that Lewis had, so he wasn't able to manage it the same way that Lewis had it. Obviously, we know the Mercedes is the superior car on the track, so there's only so much he can do with what he has, but he made the most of it. And just I know how good a second place feels, and I'm sure for Perez it feels just as good. He needs it, and the team need it, and it was great to see. I'm glad it didn't go awry in that last little foray of corners, as much as they were all great moves, but it was a great thing to see at the end of the race. But I'm glad Perez came out on top of that.
A good result, especially if you're in the shop window, right?
Yeah,
for sure. Let's talk about Ferrari, should we? Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's always a big emotion.
It's always a big emotion, Paul. You had Charles Leclerc that's backwards, P4. Sebastian Vettel in P3. Sorry, I had him reversed there.
Must be a Vettel hater. What are you doing?
Yes! Vettel, he can only pass. He can't pass it. He can only win from the lead. Yes. So Vettel and Leclerc had completely different races, with Charles running at the back and Seb running in the top 5 for most of the day. Seb had a good start that put him amongst the cat amongst the pigeons up there. However, when the track evolved, Charles was the first to switch to enders and the first to go for a second set of enders. And by doing that, he stormed from the back completely up through the field and began battling Seb for the podium. And he looked set for the third place until the last lap lunge at Perez saw him go wide and cede that position to not only Perez but Vettel as well. And it was unfortunate, but it was what a fantastic drive by Charles Leclerc, coming all the way back up through the field from where he was. And man, he was mad at himself, Paul. He knew he cooked it, and the marbles, you could see the marbles he ran over trying to get around. Man, It was just, it was a bad move, and he knew it.
Yeah, that was probably the worst marbles of the year, I would imagine, with all the inter rubber and wet tire rubber. Just
half of Lewis's tire was sitting there on the side of the track.
Right, it was. I can't imagine what it was like offline. A mess, but we did visually see it when that happened. And he got all that crap on his tires, and then going into that braking zone should have been a bit more forethought that maybe it's not going to brake quite as well as it normally would. He had the pass done, right? Yeah. But that was a tricky loss. That braking zone caught a few people out trying to fight for position. So At least he gave it a go, which is good.
Hmm.
Made an entertaining last lap, just overcooked the braking zone, and unfortunately that allowed two cars to come by him rather than finishing second. But a
Yeah.
great job by him and the team, undercutting basically on pace, coming in early, getting the most pace out of the tire, then doing it again. And as I said, I think whoever pitted for their second set of inters earliest
Hmm.
really made great gains by the end of the race, and that's definitely what
Yeah,
happened
for
to Charles.
sure. Well, Vettel was very happy too with his result. Felt good all day in his Ferrari. While Charles said he was very disappointed in himself for messing up the corner. Seb was really happy with it, and he should be. He's on the podium, and it does make you wonder if Mattia Binotto shouldn't stay away from the races more often. He must be real happy with his Zoom team manager remote work program because he wasn't at the race. He said Ferrari said, "Oh, he's going to use this new remote management system he's put together." And I'm thinking, well, Paul, maybe you could just zoom in and remote manage that lollipop thing.
That's right. Yeah, just get a little mixer or something.
Yeah, right.
Drop the lollipop.
Just a button you push.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe Matteo being away from the race is the lucky charm for them. But a P3, P4 is a great result.
Yeah, no, it was a great drive by Seb, and no great theatrics, which is what we need him to do, right? I mean,
He did what he's supposed to do.
he did what he's supposed to do. He didn't do anything crazy. He just kept car on the road, got a great start, didn't try anything stupid, didn't get involved in any issues, and the result was a podium. And we're all happy for him. He's a super nice guy,
He is.
and he's had a lot of talent, but he's also had a lot of troubles, and it's great to see him get a result this year with everything that's going against him, pretty much.
Well, it wasn't like it was a stroll in the park. I mean, he was taking a lot of heat from Lewis for a lot of that race, and was putting in some pretty good defensive drives. It must be said, without banging wheels or anything else. So I thought he was making his car pretty wide, did a really good job, and then very magnanimous after the race, going up to Lewis and congratulating him and saying it was a real honor to be a part of that history, to be around for that history being made, knowing that Schumacher is his idol and in his mind the greatest of all time. But very magnanimous of him to congratulate Lewis.
It was, sure was.
McLaren, Carlos Sainz P5, Lando Norris P8 after post-qualifying grid drops for both drivers. This was a very, very important race for McLaren as it looked set to lose big points given their inability to get on top of the tire performance all weekend long. They just couldn't get in that window. And boy, I said, oh man, they're going to lose a lot of points with Lance on pole and Sergio Perez up there and them struggling. And now they got grid penalties. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be miserable because they're fighting for third in the championship. But as it turns out, they did manage to find the grip. Big kudos to Andreas Seidel, that entire team, both drivers. Carlos had a great start, married that with a very good strategy from the team to march him up through the field and up in the order and ahead of the Red Bulls, Paul, to finish up there in P5. I thought it was a great drive, looking how much Carlos struggled all weekend long, then to look planted, to have the grip when he needed it, to couple that with a great strategy, finish in P5. Huge damage limitation for them, minimizing. Went from 1, they lost 4 points, but that ain't bad given the conditions.
No, not bad at all, considering where it's with the racing points first and second there for a while. Must have looked very dire for them.
Yeah.
But, the engineers obviously there's a lot of good calls by some of the engineers on down the paddock, but this is probably one of the best to turn their weekend around.
Yeah.
We know Sainz and Norris can do the job if you give them the car, and evidently the McLaren boys, burn the midnight oil and got it done. And Sainz was just right on the heels of third, fourth. Right at the end, he was right there. So very impressive by him as usual.
Yeah, you'd expect it. Yeah.
It's still weird to me though. I don't know, for some reason he needs to win some races next year because he very deserves it. But he puts on some impeccable drives there in the upper midfield, week in, week out.
Yeah, he really does. And for Lando, equally began making ground during the race and critically passed Stroll, right? So that's
Yeah.
your arch nemesis. So he was on a mission to get around Stroll to make sure that he
Hmm.
negated that points haul from Lance in ninth, who was taking racing points tally backwards as he drifted back through the field. So Lando took advantage of it, got that McLaren ahead of him, minimized the damage in the hands of Norris. The team managed to keep the Perez finish the only direct competitor in front of them, and also kept both Renaults behind them. So that was a critical point in getting Carlos and Lando ahead of the Renaults and getting ahead of one of the racing points, meaning Perez was the only one that could score against McLaren.
Hmm.
Very good recovery from a dodgy weekend. A great job from the team making the changes to get the car competitive, and Lando also delivering from starting from way back.
Yeah, starting from way back, and yeah, that last third of the race was very impressive by him to make
Hmm.
some big moves and big points. Even though they were small points, they were big points, right? Because
Yep.
every point really counts. So every single pass he was able to make there near the end of the race was super important for the team, and he is fighting for his team because he's coming back next year. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Red Bull, Alex Albon P7, Max Verstappen P6. Max had a terrible start, and there must be something to that Honda clutch issue because he just hasn't been, setting the world alight with his starts this year. And that's a shame because the team looked to have the quickest car on the grid for most of the weekend. Max recovered from that bad start. But then it seemed like he got impatient with Perez, tried to pass, made a mistake, spun, losing critical ground, flat spotted, had to immediately box for those flat spotted tires. That left Alex Albon really to take the baton and go after the leaders, which he actually did. But I don't know. It's sort of an uncharacteristic weekend for Max, too. This isn't Max in the wet that you're used to seeing, where he was hunting and finding grip where nobody else could. This
right.
isn't necessarily, I don't know, just, I guess, like Bottas, it's just an off weekend for Max. But that impatient pass and mistake is something you haven't seen in quite a while from Max. So bad weekend, Paul.
Yeah, it wasn't. There wasn't a lot of room to play out there that he had at places like Brazil, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
nature of
right.
the track and how everything was evolving. You can't drive completely a different line than everyone else is doing. But I feel like the Red Bull car actually was a pretty damn good car for this track and in
Yeah,
this race. But I think, that put on his back foot, I think Max kind of pressed a little too hard. If he was a bit more patient and didn't feel the need to be the Maxi Axe out there, he might have had a better result, quite honestly. Albon looked sensational there in the middle of the race.
yeah,
And then, he was saying his tires were dead at the front, but then they left him out too long. I think for that, everyone was searching obviously for
yeah,
the tire switch around and do we go to slicks? And I think they left him out way too long when he'd already killed his tires, to then decide, okay, we're going to put another set of inters on there. And we know now that putting those inters on as the track was even drier was actually a negative for performance. So if they'd have pitted him right at that point when he was right on the cusp of second place,
yep,
and he wasn't really gaining anything. As soon as it kind of became static, I think that was the time to bring him in,
absolutely.
get him to
Yeah.
go do something different, and then charge again. I think it would have been a completely different result for Albon at that point.
Yeah, focused on Max, trying to get him in, trying to get that strategy to work, and I think it cost Alex. He was setting fast laps, got within 4 seconds of the leader, and then spun on those war tires because he was out too long.
Right.
I think if they'd have boxed him, he may have had a shot at the podium. But Alex said, because he said everything looked good, but went wrong, and he spent the rest of the day battling Max for position. It seemed to be a case of Max's impatience and then Alex's tire issues that scuttled what
Right.
was otherwise a very promising weekend. And I would argue, I'm with you, Paul. I think they left him out too long. I think if they boxed him immediately when that crossover seemed to happen, where those fresh enters was the choice that Ferrari made with Leclerc, and they boxed Alex, I think he would have made some serious ground on him.
Yeah, I think he would have definitely been fighting for the podium, if not
Yeah,
more. Put the
yeah,
pressure on the other people because he was way further up the road than Charles was at that point.
yep,
So if they'd gone
exactly.
that with that same strategy, it would have turned out, very well. But I wonder, you think it seems like they're leaving Albon as a kind of a guinea pig to better Max's race sometimes.
I was thinking the same thing when I was watching this unfold. I thought,
Yeah.
oh man, he's like a sacrificial lamb out there.
Right. Again, yeah,
Yeah.
and that it's hard for him to regain, his composure in the team and his stature in the team if they just keep using him like that. It seemed to me like that's why they were leaving him out there, just to see what
Yeah.
they could do then for Max,
It's
rather than
it's
what can we do to
exactly
make Albon win.
Yeah, it's exact same thought I was having watching that race as it was happening. And I thought, oh, box him, box him. He's fast. He's lapping much quicker than the leaders. He gets up to within 4 seconds, and then he starts hitting a cliff. You got to box him. And they were so focused on Max at that time, and well, let's see what Max and I'm thinking at that Max's race is cooked. Alex is up there making a hunt for a win. You know. And I just feel like, gosh, at the time they did that, I thought, oh my gosh, he was a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah.
To try to sort out what they wanted to do with Max, and that's a shame because I really think Alex could have done well, if not won the damn thing. All right, let's talk about Renault. Esteban Ocon, P11, Daniel Ricciardo, P10. Ocon spun at the start, was hit by his teammate, and then hit by Bottas, resulting in a rear puncture, which prompted him to box, and that put him all the way at the back. He had good enough pace, fought his way back to 11th, but unfortunately, it's one of those deals. And you knew there was going to be some argy-bargy at the very beginning at that first turn, and unfortunately, Ocon got it.
Yeah, he was completely innocent on that one, though.
Yeah.
I mean, he had got a great start. I mean, he
did.
bugging for third, at that point. He should have been third coming out of the first series of turns. And unfortunately, Lewis stuffed it inside Ricardo, and that kind of made Ricardo move up a little bit, and boom, doesn't take much in those conditions to turn someone around.
It doesn't.
And,
Both he and Dan had good starts, but then Dan's tires hit a cliff in performance, and it just could not get those inters to work. Dan said at times it was coming on the radio saying, "Hey, Dan, you're the fastest car out there," and then like a lap later, his tires were completely gone, and that allowed Norris to get past him, drop Renault down. Get this. Now they're behind the other two by racing. They're behind Racing Point by 13 points now. They were just 1 point heading into this weekend. They come out because they finished down the order behind McLaren and both Racing Points. Now they're 13 points behind McLaren in the constructors' title, and that's pretty brutal.
It is. I mean, the way Renault have been coming on recently, you were like, wow, I think you'd pick them as the third place people, and then all of a sudden it just gets turned on its nose. You would have thought Dan would thrive in these conditions, quite honestly. If they've got it a little bit wrong, they've made their sums a little bit wrong, then there's nothing he can do. And it seems like that's kind of what the Renault team did. So they've got 3 races to gain back 13 points, which doesn't seem like much, but when you think of how many people are fighting for every one of those points, it is tough. So,
it is very tough. Yeah, the reason to watch F1 for the balance of the season is for third. And there's a lot of money at hand, a lot of bragging rights, and they're all pretty equally matched between Racing Point, McLaren, and Renault. It's going to be close.
It's going to be ferocious, I think.
Yeah, I do
fun.
too.
Yeah.
Alpha Tauri, Daniel Kvyat P12, Pierre Gasly P13. Pierre unfortunately started at the back of the grid due to his team working on the car in Parc Fermé conditions, and he was on a completely different strategy than Daniel. Despite that, they struggled with the wet tires on Saturday and Sunday, couldn't get the enders to work either. Very difficult weekend for Pierre. It's unfortunate because, and Daniel, he had that spin, but drove within himself to finish just out of the points. But it's unfortunate, Paul, because this is the first time that neither of these drivers finished in the points. And you and I talked about it. Man, it really looked like the pace of this team was thereabouts, and certainly in the hands of Pierre Gasly. And last week with Daniel Kvyat with a great performance, it's unfortunate to see this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the race is a bit of an anomaly, right? And we can praise the Mercedes team and the Racing Point team for getting it right, and I think the AlphaTauri team just got it quite a bit wrong, right? And hopefully they do come back to fight a little harder in the next 3 races. I'm sure they will. Honestly, I think the car's good, but really tricky in conditions, getting everything right, and you really forecasting something, you don't really know how it's going to end up, and sometimes you get it a bit wrong. And I think that's pretty much what they did here. And once you go a certain way, you can't make adjustments just by tire pressure in a pit stop.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much set with what you got given at that point.
Right. The other Alfa Romeo, Kimi Räikkönen P15, Antonio Giovinazzi, a DNF. While Red Bull were celebrating their 300th race this weekend, Alfa were celebrating their 500th race this weekend, and it was a weekend, unfortunately, to forget. Giovinazzi crashed on his way to the grid, and then later retired on track with a gearbox issue. He got a little assistance, limped it to the formation grid. They put a new nose on, but unfortunately retired with the gearbox. And this really left Kimi out the Finn, thinking, oh, this would be, his kind of conditions. But he had a slow start, several off-track moments to fumble his way back to 15th. Just a bad weekend. You'd have thought that, as I mentioned earlier, both he and Bottas, this would be really right up their alley with the rally type of race. But bad weekend for Alfa.
Yeah, no, they another team that just got it wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And Kimi can for sure can drive in those conditions, but if you're not given the car with enough grip in the tire, you're just going to flounder out there.
Yep.
Bottas was a little different because we saw what Lewis did with the same car, right? So, but I think the Alfa team was just out to lunch a little bit. What surprises me, because we had that virtual safety car.
Yep.
There is you put all these zones for drivers to put their car in. They could paint the thing orange so the drivers know where to pull in. When they pull there, they still have to throw the safety car anyway because they don't give a place for the car to actually be pulled out there safely. So
yeah,
something needs to be changed there, where if there's a zone where you're supposed to pull your car, it should be able to pull your car into a place where you're not actually going to affect the race and have to throw the virtual safety car. It's that might as well just not do it at all and just have the arm go up fully. So I think they need to address that a little bit, because it's a little infuriating where it's just a car pulled up all the way off to the side in a safe zone, but he can't get off the track and they can't pull him off the track and avoid a safety car.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know, should we continue with that whole idea of starting the session again with a tractor out on track, or
don't even.
Should they keep doing that?
Wow. I mean that's not good.
Not good, considering why we have where we are with Jules Bianchi and
right. And you don't do it. You do not give a green flag when the vehicle should be off in that point in time. The vehicle has to be off.
They said, well, the guy said that it was on its way off and it was going to be no. You got to wait till you visually have evidence that it's gone.
Yeah, it has to be off there, because all kinds of things can happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the vehicle could then break.
Yeah.
Unless it's physically out of the way, it's not out of the way, and you can't throw a green flag till those vehicles are out of the way. In the old days, before the Bianchi thing, I was kind of like, whatever, leave parts all over the place. I don't care, just keep racing, right?
Right.
But we'll evolve and we learn what really can go wrong, and we've learned that lesson. We don't need to learn it again.
No, that was bad, and a lot of the drivers very vocal about that this week.
And it should be. Yeah,
it should never have happened, and I agree with them, because you don't know what it can. Even the most mundane thing of a tractor going out and recovering a car. I think of the tragedy a few years ago, Canada, where a tractor was recovering a car and ran over one of the marshals and killed him.
Right.
It was just tragic,
Yep.
So you got to be damned careful in situations like that, and easier for me to say than do. But Michael Massey should know better than that.
Absolutely.
All right, let's see. We're down to Williams, George Russell P16, Nicholas Latifi at DNF. Williams gambled and called both cars into the pit stop before the start on the formation lap, and started them from the pits and put on the inters while everybody else was on the full wets. And they thought that it was they did that. It was such a slippery track that George Russell crashed on the pit entry and it damaged his wing. So they narrowly got that car fixed to start the race. The Inter gamble did save them a pit stop, but unfortunately, Paul, with those Inters on, they couldn't make enough ground to actually make that Inter strategy work for them. They didn't gap anyone, and they couldn't make that really work. And then, unfortunately, Latifi retired after getting Grosjean'd. And Russell trundled home in last. A bad weekend for Williams.
Yeah, not great. He looked pretty good there for a while. Russell was up the 11th spot or whatever because of the Inters. Once the Inters started to become a good option. But yeah, this is just the whole race transpired against them pretty much. And Latifi did his usual thing.
Yeah, right.
I know it was Grosjean, but it just every time the only time Latifi gets on the TV is when he's backwards.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. Well, if it was a bad weekend from there, it was worse for Haas. Kevin had a very good start, was running in the points, Paul, but a slow stop cost him serious time and positions, and he had to stop at the pit exit, and the team had to hustle down and wheel him back, and by that time he'd lost so much time, they retired the car. So that was the extent of his race, and then Roman had a tough day, tangled with Latifi, spun off and into the gravel, and called it a day.
Yep.
Yeah. Not good.
Maybe they should change the drivers for next year. Oh,
you think?
Done that.
Yeah.
Oh, I like Magnussen. That's fine, but that's a pit error. That team's had some pit errors with the wheel nuts. Maybe they need a new manufacturer. Yeah.
The Steiner is like, that's our own fault. We got to fix that. You think?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because I like Kevin. And I think Kevin should be in F1. He's doing a great job when he can, but he's just given a pig of a car. And you can't turn that around. So.
Nope, I agree.
Anyway, all right. Well, that's how they finished. That's what we think about how they finished, but we do hand out some awards. And I want to give a shout out because I think I am going to change this first award. And I want to make sure it's on Twitter at KK2000 for his suggestion. And I think it's a wonderful suggestion. He said, suggested replacement for pass of the race to move of the race. A move can still be a pass, but it can also be a ton of other stuff. And I agree with you, my friend. I think it's a great idea. And I'm officially changing this because for you and I, trying to find pass of the race at some of these DRS tracks is impossible because we don't call DRS passes.
Right. And as we found out recently, DRS is staying.
Yeah. Tragically, we just found that out.
Ross Brawn is a bloody liar.
That's right. You're a liar. That's exactly. You remember what he said.
Brawn.
That's right.
Lies. Oh, lies!
That's exactly what it is. So I'm going with the suggestion from KK2000 on Twitter, and I'm changing it to move of the race. So this, then, is move of the race. Woo! Yes, sirree. Move of the race. Paul, for my move of the race, I'm giving it to Charles Leclerc and Ferrari for such a heads-up move by realizing they switched. He was the first to switch to the Inters. That was absolutely the right move, but compounded by, as you've said a couple times in this podcast, they were the first to put him on a new set of Inters, and that paid dividends because he marched from the back of the grid all the way to a podium and gunning for second. Now, he blew it, and he felt terrible about it, and he knew he blew it, but what a great move by doing that, and it completely reversed his race, moved him to a podium position, which he himself admitted he blew, but had he not, he would have been third, and I thought it was a great move.
Mm-hmm. It certainly was.
Who did you have?
Well, I don't know. There's a couple of actually strategy. Now this whole thing opens up. Strategy, it could be a physical move on the track,
Right.
But I'm going to give it to Perez for countering. Obviously, Charles
what I
made
just
that
said.
move, but for keeping his head strong, and not panicking when Charles went by him, and to get that car into second place in that last melee, in that little section at the end.
Well, and Seb was all over him
had some
too.
exciting moments there before.
Yeah,
it's one of the exciting places in its lead up. I don't really like chicanes so much, but for some reason, that little finishing part of Turkey has had some highlights.
It has.
That was definitely one of them. Yeah.
Well, he held off Leclerc and then Seb on the straight. I mean, Seb was all over the back of him. And he held him off.
Yeah.
So kudos to him. All right, well, that's a good one. Well, the next one award remains the same. It is Donkey of the Race. Yes. All right, Paul. Who are you going to give Donkey to?
Well,
I'm giving it to Red Bull.
yes, that is a great donkey. I
Yeah.
think very underachieved for
Yes.
what they should have had. I think they made some bad calls, and the drivers made some bad errors out there on the
Yeah.
track as well, with a car that probably could have won. I think.
Yep. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, yeah.
Who'd you give it to?
I'm giving it to Bottas because, your teammate wins the race by like 15 seconds, doesn't put a foot wrong, and you end up spinning 6 times.
Come on, son.
Come on, man.
That's
Snap
just
out
not
of it,
good.
Bottas. You got another year to fix this thing. But,
I know. He's out there going,
I just hope it's me all the time.
it's
yeah,
just terrible.
yeah.
Not
all the
good.
Time, not all the time, Valtteri, but definitely today was one of your worst days.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was a bad race. I agree. All right. Well, then that leaves us the last award, which is Drive of the Race. Whew.
Ow!
Yeah, getting your funk on, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm funky. Yeah.
See? That's more you than the Mersey beat. That's not you.
The Mersey beats? No, that's pretty good too. I take it, take it. Now after our, we've got our Jamaican chief engineer now.
That's
we
right.
run after our victories,
There you go.
at least our podiums at least. Bring some reggae in too.
Well, maybe I should have done. Huh? Yeah. So, well, you were a big ska fan.
I was a big ska fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So reggae obviously a massive part of ska. So yes.
And you weren't afraid to admit to me that you were one of the OG. You were into Madness way back when.
Yes, Madness specials more so, but
Yeah.
all the two-tone stuff was just great era. I was talking to my brother about it actually.
Yeah?
Congratulations to my brother for winning the 12 hours.
What? Yes, of
Right?
course.
It
Yes.
was a good weekend for the Charleys.
Yes, it was.
Meeting at the podium, not just at Thanksgiving, but on the podium at Sebring.
Yeah.
the
Did your
Masters
brother
team.
give you a noogie there? Your older brother?
It's fun. It's fun actually.
Yeah, it's great.
Being in the same racing series. So his team
Yeah.
finished first and third. So
Yeah.
yes, indeed. So,
Oh, that's good. So was he a ska fan too?
yeah. So
okay.
he was talking. He thinks ska should come back. He said. You know what I think? The next big thing, we get a boy band, a band together, and start playing ska music again. It'll be big. I'm like, I'm not sure it'll be that big, but it sounds
Great.
good.
It sounds good. Why not?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, my drive of the race has to be Lewis Hamilton. I think he did a fantastic job. There were a lot of people being impatient out there, getting strung out, overdriving the tires, overdriving the track. You had Valtteri spinning 6 times, Lance dropping backwards, Max, blowing it, spinning. Red Bull leaving Alex too long. He spun. Lewis, complete sublime drive, complete measured, kept the temperature cool, didn't panic, worked with his team, worked those tires into a window, made it happen, took advantage of DRS when it came out, got that Mercedes and deployed that strategy just impeccably. And what a way to win your 7th world title. My gosh, great drive by Lewis.
No, absolutely fantastic job. I mean, he's the past few years he's just been untouchable. Quite honestly,
yeah.
Some try, but never quite get there, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm going to give it to Perez because I think he
fabulous.
did a near equal job to Lewis.
Yep.
He doesn't have the tool to fight with that Lewis does.
That's right.
But he followed the strategy impeccably and under a lot of pressure there. It's not just that last little section on the last lap. It's knowing that the Ferraris are coming, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to make mistakes there, and he didn't make a mistake, and he was able to hold on to that second position. So I think Perez did himself so many favors. Not that he needs to prove, I don't think, how good he is, but he definitely showed it right there in that race as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, great result for Perez. It was in some ways it was a mirror drive to Lewis's.
Yeah.
And he pulled it off when many others couldn't. And I just think it was a terrific. I think both those guys, incredible drive. There's others you could argue. Carlos Sainz for sure. I think he had a fantastic. I thought Leclerc had a fantastic. Yeah, he blew it at the end, but it was a great race. You know, he was there. Best finished P4. That ain't bad compared to where he started. So great results up and down the field. But
interesting race for sure.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a fun race to watch. And kudos to Turkey for being able to pull that off. And like I said, that criticism of Turkey and what they tried to do to make a better track and get it repaved, and I think that's a little harsh. I think they pulled it off. And I'm like you, Paul. If there is a cancellation, like they said next year, Vietnam, you know, it was on the grid and then it's off. And, you know, I'm thinking if there is a single slot to put something in there, I think Turkey might be fun to go back a year later and let those cars go full welly around turn 8. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
It would be a lot of fun. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we do have one mailbag.
You've got mail.
Oh.
And this is from your and my friend, me, M-I-E.
Ah.
Yes. And I loved the question, and I thought, who better to answer such a pivotal, such a very British question as this one?
Oh, geez. You didn't even pre-press. Okay, I'm
I
ready.
didn't. I'm catching Paul cold. He doesn't know what the question is.
It's kind of like mastermind. I'm on mastermind.
That's right. So this is all very quintessential British. And being the quintessential Brit, I thought you could answer this one. His question is, a question about the Kingdom of Kent. What is the difference between a Kentish man and a man from Kent?
What is the difference? Well, a Kentish man can be anywhere in the world, like myself.
Right.
Not from Kent, but from Essex.
Right.
But holding the Kentish values.
Yeah.
The standards.
So-called.
The stiff upper lip.
Yes.
And, of course, the hidden secret language of Kent to himself.
And the secret handshake of all Kentians.
Which is actually by the foot. So, caught you out there, didn't you?
Yeah, you did.
Right. But a man in Kent could be from anywhere, but doesn't really have Kent in his heart.
He's not, a man of Kent is not a Kentish man.
No, a Kentish man holds himself to a higher standard, for sure.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
There's the answer to...
I think it's a wonderful answer.
Thank you.
Now, if you truly are a Kentish man out there listening to the podcast, you let us know what makes you so awesome. And if you're a man from Kent and you want to defend your honor, feel free to do so.
Right.
Oh, boy. Now, being Scottish, of Scottish heritage myself, I highly recommend the book How the Scots Invented the Modern World.
Yes, it's a very big book, but it's very good.
It's a very
I
good
have it
book.
myself.
Yes, awesome book.
Yes.
Yeah, it may surprise you, the impact the Scots have had, and I'm not just talking about Jim Clark or Jackie Stewart.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff.
All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. Be sure to stop by the website, theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion. Just do it with decorum and civility. Also, a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters out there. And I'm trying to, for our Patreon supporters, I finally got the Zoom account, and I'm going to be setting up a Zoom call with all of you. And I'm trying to figure out a time to do that with you. I think the Zoom license that I have will only have 100 people or allow up to 100 people, but I want to try to set up a Zoom call. I don't even know how I'd manage 100 people, but there'd be a lot of people saying a lot of, Lewis is the greatest of all time. No, he's not. You know,
that's a lot of boxes to be looking at.
Yeah, it's a lot of boxes. Yeah. So anyway, I'll be announcing maybe a time and date for having a call with all of you. I would love to chat with you. So huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. And if you like the podcast, go over to iTunes, give us a good rating, give us a little love over there or on whatever app you use to listen to this podcast. Would appreciate that as always. Paul, it is always a joy having you on to do a race review, and I cannot tell you how excited I am for your P2. Congratulations to you, the entire team.
Yes, there we go.
There it is. Heart of Racing.
Wrong finger.
There
There
it
we
is.
go. Yep.
Heart of Racing. Check Heart of Racing out.
Check it out.
It's a great charity as well. So,
Hey, only 9 weeks till Daytona.
only 9 weeks. That's it, man. You guys got to get busy.
Yeah, Formula One, they can sleep, they can whatever. We
Right.
don't even sleep at them, so no.
No, you only got 9 weeks to get that program ready for Daytona, man.
Yeah, crazy.
That's great. Anyway, all right. Well, until next week when we do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.